So I heard they make paint for Gundams. That's pretty crazy. What if you don't have thinner for it, though? Well, then you get a result. Something like this. Let's get into it. So I had another video I was going to do before this second one, but I figured I'd go chronologically with these first few that I have queued up before I, just kind of go at the ones that I'm really excited to talk about. So this guy was actually a birthday gift from my bestie a year ago, and like 2 years ago now. And yeah, this was actually ordered for me a few months before, but then came in with another pre-order that was included in the order, so it took a while. I believe this was P-Rex Hobby where he had gotten this. It might have been Trinity Hobby, both Canadian stores, pretty good stuff. At the time, I was living in a basement after my divorce, was homeless, so I was renting out a room until I had found a place, gotten back on my feet. Had a few Gundams in that little basement bedroom, and this guy was one of them. This was the only paint job I think I did while I was there, and a nightmare. So let's get into a little diagnosis here. So, looking at the model, what do we see? I see a lot of brush strokes, but these, oddly enough, don't look exactly like acrylic brush strokes, especially on the pink. Maybe you can see that, maybe you can't. Let's see here. So you can see a lot of texture, a glossy surface. This is not top coated, by the way. So a glossy surface with a lot of brush strokes. The metallic brass here, I believe, is just Citadel. But this red and this pink are the ones you see sitting on my desk here, and we'll talk about these a little bit. So I saw that they were selling a line of Gundam colors. I'm like, okay, Gundam paints. This is cool. I just started painting Gundams. Let's check this out. And I saw these were Aqueous. I had just gotten a wet palette, an Army Painter wet palette. Interesting stuff. Look into wet palettes if you haven't used them. They're quite handy for acrylics. But I figured, so these are Aqueous. They can be thinned with water. And I believe that's the sales pitch on them, right? Is that I believe these are acrylic versions of your Mr. Hobby paints. Now, I believe that's not the case because right now in Canada, we're going through a Canadian ban. And these are included in the banned Mr. Hobby products along with almost every other line that they have. Mr. Hobby is a great brand. Despite this this lesson I learned here. So there must be some sort of amount of lacquer or chemicals in here and not just your typical acrylic paint. And the main reason why I think this is not top coated, and this has a very vinyl-like feel to it, like when lacquer paint dries. Now I know. It's weird. Acrylic, I feel like now I painted enough that to the touch I can tell if something is acrylic, lacquer, top coated, matte, not top coated, raw plastic, etc. But these aqueous paints throw you for a loop because I believe they're acrylic based. It says they're water based on the bottle or on the pot, and typically we know that acrylic paint and water mix and lacquer paint and water do not mix. So essentially what happened is I put this pink stuff on my wet palette here, right? And it really didn't thin. Like, it did mix. It didn't split the way that a typical Mr. Hobby paint splits when it interacts with water or hardens like almost immediately. but it still had the properties of trying to hand paint with lacquer. And if you've hand painted with lacquer, you know that there is a learning process to it. Some people say it's not possible. Some people say you shouldn't. Those people are silly. So essentially, what it did is it kind of made texture. Like it has an inherent texture to the paint when it dries. Some sort of vinyl-y, plasticky sort of texture, right? So there must be something in here. I'm no chemist, so I would really like to you know, maybe know a bit better. But the big thing about painting lacquers and the big tip off of whether it's a lacquer or not is just the scratch, how it can hold up to a scratch. Like if this were acrylic, I really feel like I'm giving it, right? I'm giving it, and none of this pink paint is coming off, right? I could probably, this black, I believe, is just normal Citadel acrylic. Now it has cured for like a year and a half, so maybe this actually won't. But no, see, like the little bit of scraping I did with my hand took off some of the paint there. You can barely see it. You can barely see it, but I can see it. And that's just simply not going to happen with most lacquers unless you're using a knife, tweezers, etc. Or really sharp fingernails, maybe. So practically talking about this paint, then, if we're going to talk about how to use this paint, always shake up your bottle. Let's actually see if I can get this bottle open. This is looking pretty nasty, but this is the Pink for Char Asnable Aqueous Color 5. And see here, there's always this warning here that's usually through California. A lot of these I see are safety labels for California, and being Canadian, maybe those labels are just not flying anymore. So it might be just a labeling issue, and I hope it's something as easy as that that can be figured out. So you can see in here, pretty thick. I use this paint a lot because I paint quite a few char suits, and also I'm 98% sure this is not primed, and all of these primed weapon pieces up here, or unprimed rather, and actually, you know what? I might have given it a once over. This looks like the Army Painter hand painted primer. They have a bottle primer that you can hand paint. So it does look like I did prime this, and then I just never went back and painted these, right? So even without a primer, though, I believe this stuff is pretty sticky. So let's give it a go. And seeing here, so you might think, okay, this is kind of going like if you painted a pink. Look how glossy that is still on the spoon. Okay, with acrylic. So this is almost like an acrylic here. So I feel like you would probably still want to use acrylic thinner for this. If this is truly acrylic, like they say, that would definitely be the play. But I was doing this completely blind, no research, thinning it down with water, and really did not get a great result. But it did teach me just how resilient and just how smooth and vinyl-like this really any Mr. Hobby product dries. Like Mr. Hobby stuff. Lacquer paint in general, Gaia stuff as well, like really sticks, really feels nice. It still feels like even before a top coat, like you're touching a toy, touching something very plasticky. You don't feel that graininess, that like sketchiness that you get when you're touching acrylic paint before it gets the top coat. So I would recommend these Aqueuses for that, but I think even I need to look more into how to use them because I'm actually more comfortable now using typical Mr. Hobby products and thinner uh, by hand rather than this Aqueous stuff. This Aqueous stuff, I think, might you might want to dedicate thinner for it. So the problems I have here with this model, I painted this while it was fully built, so you can see like paint has pooled up here. Just gross, like paint chipping off a little bit whenever it's moving. It's not very fun. These insides here, I didn't paint, and I think I was too afraid at the time to go in with the black that I did these trims with, because I didn't want to mess up my metallic, but, you know, time does the job anyways. These seams at the front really need to be done, and I feel like most kits, for my first, honestly, year and a half, I wasn't really doing any seam line removal on. And then, as time takes its, toll on a kit, or you play with it a little bit, things start to loosen up. And your paint job that you thought looked immaculate starts to show literal cracks. No painted backpack. Again, this guy was never top coated. This is not one that I'm insanely fond on, but I do keep this guy on my shelf because honestly, at a distance, he looks all right. I like the stark colors, how he looks almost like he's from Mega Man or something. I did have these top things painted with an Army Painter acrylic, and like I'm saying, that just rubs off over time. But this Aqueous stuff will not rub off. I could probably run this underwater, and I think just the blacks and the metallics would come off. I apologize for the big glare on the visor, but this has one of those clear pieces. So I went in with metallic, a Army Painter, or maybe a Citadel underneath. You can see here I got some paint on this because I was painting it after I put the clear piece on like an idiot. And this is a 30-minute missions 3D eye decal. Maybe you're peeping this a little bit. And see if I can get that in focus. So it's like a 3D sticker that has like a little bit of detail on the inside. And that's really, really nice on some Xeon kits. I actually used all the ones I have already. So bottoms of the feet, severely unpainted, like not even painted black, like just nothing. This was very common for me and still can be, but I'll at least make sure there's paint on the bottoms of the feet and not just saying fuck it, right? I usually won't go in multicolor. I won't mask feet, no Ray Studios level feet, foot jobs over here. Honestly, this one has a lot less to talk about than the GOG. It's more just practically knowing what you're buying. When you look at Aqueous, maybe do a little bit of research. But I honestly like going in blind to stuff, working it on plastic, seeing what's wrong with it, what I can do, just kind of figuring out the materials that I have is always fun for me. Sometimes, like I bought a big used paint lot at one point of a guy who was getting out of the hobby, funnily enough. And he had a ton of paints that were meant for airbrush. I don't airbrush with two young kids running around. So I got that. And he ended up, not using a lot of those paints. So I had a bunch of full pots of Mr. Hobby stuff and Gaia stuff, and I just kind of had to figure out how to use that because I wanted to get my money's worth out of it without an airbrush. And it's when you look at this compared to something that I have now, it's definitely a stark night and day difference. But I do like the hunger of the old models, like the you just want to try something and you think it'll look absolutely awful, but if you trust yourself, it does end up looking maybe not good to other people, but within your sensibilities personally. So I'm like, you know what? This guy looks like he's from Mega Man 5 or something. Like, this looks like a random enemy, you know, that'd be like taking out Mega Man right before a checkpoint or something. So look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. This is acrylic paint that I put down 5 minutes ago, maybe, and I put it face down here like an idiot. None came off on the table, and I can rub this. I can bend this spoon, and it's not flaking. The fact that this paint has give is insane. It has bend to the paint. Okay, so this is probably not picking up with the insane amount of glare, but I feel like any normal acrylic would be just wiping off onto my fingers right now. All I can see on my fingers is residue from being a smoker. So yeah, I would just say don't be afraid to mess up models. Don't be afraid to try new products. And yeah, I would say just trust your sensibilities. I thought this would be a fun color scheme to do a Char's Unicorn ZoGok. And it did end up looking like I wanted it to look. It's, you know, certainly not up to my skill level now, but for being on a shelf with my other Char suits, it's certainly serviceable. Certainly my least favorite of the ZoGoks that I have. I've put a decent amount of work into my other ZoGoks, but this is a ZoGok, so it does not count. I like Unicorn, but I can't say this guy is an all-timer for me. The model's actually a lot better than some of your other ZoGok variants, like the experimental ZoGok or what have you, that barely hold together properly. But this is a fun little kit with not a lot of options other than being able to hold these things that come out of the head, which does make them harder for painting individually unless you top coated them. But that's really all I have to say about this guy. Just wanted to show him off and talk a little bit about these Aqueous paints because I don't really know a lot about them either. So, yeah, that's the video. All right, take care.